gone, it affects people's right to choose. It takes away all of our personal liberties. Just because something's available doesn't mean they're from what they're fear of, and that's heroin addicts, or crackheads, whatever your choice might be. But more importantly, the war on the marijuana, the prohibition of marijuana is absolutely in numbers that are out of this world. People support marijuana decriminalization at the least, and I don't see the problem. I don't see the problem if you're not. My rules are you can't lie, cheat, or steal. As long as you're, I don't care what drugs you do in the privacy of your own home. If you're not crossing those three lines, then I don't see what the problem is. So do what you say you'll do, and.
Patrick, is there specific legislation that you would support?
I would absolutely support decriminalizing pot. I mean, like those cartels have the monopoly on that whole game, and I come from the 33rd district, which is a rural and historically agricultural district. So if people want to smoke it, we can grow it, and that's jobs, right? Are we all about jobs and trying to get out of this recession? And that creates, as much as I'm opposed to taxes, it creates tax revenue for the parasite that is the EU.
Okay. Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Anthony, Tejas.
Yeah, so if I was elected to the House of Delegates, I would like to see first a bill that would decriminalize marijuana, purely because statistically there are a lot more African American men and Hispanic men being locked away for this. And as a whole, an entire class of society is being created who can now no longer get a job because they have a felony on their record. So I would remedy the immediate problem, which is creating a permanent underclass and creating career criminals. The second thing I would do would be to work on repealing the war on drugs. The war on drugs for the last several decades has not lowered the street price of marijuana. So I think that we can consider it a failure. If you can buy pot for the exact same amount that you could buy it before you started this war on drugs, then there's no reason to continue creating a prohibitionist policy that isn't returning any benefit to your society. You're spending money on police, you're spending money on military operations in Latin America, and you're seeing a whole lot of death in Mexico and even in the southern parts of the United States. All of this could be alleviated if we took the power out of the hands of the cartels by opening up the free market.
Great. Laura DeLowe.
Well, not far off from my colleagues. We're at a historic point in Virginia where something like 70% of Virginians who are legalizing medical marijuana, and like 52 to 54, depending who you ask, support full legalization of marijuana. So day one, I introduced a bill to make medical marijuana available. Like, let the market handle it. There's a need for it. Various very big names have come out in favor of it lately. Day two, introduced a bill to just legalize it for recreational use. I am one of those libertarians that thinks we should completely end the war on drugs, and I think that should start at the state level. So I would work with my colleagues on all sides of all aisles to head towards that in Virginia. And like both my colleagues said, Patrick Haggerty touched on the natural rights perspective. It's not just how many people support it. I mean, this is taking away people's choice and not trusting people to be responsible with their bodies. And I think that's a very key point. So.
Great, thanks. You all mentioned, well said, says Patrick. Patrick mentioned this would create more jobs.
Carla, can you speak up a little bit so everybody can hear the question?
Sure, I will speak up. The benefits that I heard you guys mention with respect to what would happen if we ended the war on drugs is more jobs, reduced crime, especially in Mexico and southern United States, more personal choice, and something else I can't read my notes that I think you had mentioned, Anthony. Are there any other benefits that any of you can see to ending the war on drugs, and can you see any downside to ending the war on drugs? Laura?
I mean, the fact that we're spending money on police forces to keep people from putting whatever they want in their body, it's reprehensible to me because there's tons of crimes out there that police should be investigating. I mean, I'd much rather my taxes go towards investigating murders and rapes and deaths instead of what somebody grew in their backyard and then enjoyed. So I think that's one big key benefit is a police force that can actually concentrate on real crime.
Okay, anybody else have any other?
Yeah, making, and this is a war on drugs, making enemy combatants out of American citizens for being themselves and chilling in their own house. I don't want to shoot, whatever. I don't want to smoke a joint in their own house, that's fine. But they're certainly not a criminal, nor I don't think they should be sent to Guantanamo. I was getting sent to Guantanamo, but it's the same thing. They're enemies in a war on drugs. And the federal government sees them as enemies, and I think that has absolutely no place in America. Hey, right? That's well said.
Anything else?
I would say that one problem we would face is how are we going to remedy all of the people that have been convicted for drug-related offenses. This is something that we'll have to actively work through to determine whether or not their drug-related convictions involve, other violent convictions. The other thing we'd have to look at is the fact that if you smoke pot in school, you get kicked out in Virginia. I don't understand how that's fair to do that, and you've essentially now taken away that person's ability to learn and have their own livelihood in the future. So we'll have to figure out a way, if we're serious about this, also looking at the educational perspective of what these policies will conflict with in terms of state education policies.
Okay, thank you.
I can just touch on something.
Sure.
You said violence. They twisted down there in Richmond. They twisted the laws because they've got so many lawyers down there that a violent crime is a consensual deal between two consenting adults. You know, they've turned that. If you get caught selling pot, that's considered a violent crime, no matter if they were strong armed or not. So it's not the lawyers have to be they got to be put back in their place. We're perverting words have meaning. Violence is violence. It's not two adults consenting to the deal. Two consenting adults doing a transaction. Somehow they've construed to where they are violent crimes. So they're not going to get their rights back when they do it.
Thank you. With regard to taxes and spending, what would you do if elected, and how would it be different from what your opponents are proposing to do or have done if they have served in office already? Anthony, if you could start off on this.
So, both of my opponents, for the most part, we've come to agreement in terms of how much money my district sends to Richmond. So Falls Church and Fairfax County, for every $1 they send to Richmond, we only get 20 cents back in spending on education. My Democratic opponent doesn't see this as a problem. The Republican and I both see this as a problem because we're effectively subsidizing the rest of the state's education program. And what I would like to see as a candidate is to keep that money within my community and allow my community to determine where that money will go and suit the best needs of the community. There's a problem right now in terms of land development with Falls Church. There's not enough land to build new schools, and there's overcrowding. If we were allowed to keep our entire dollar, we as taxpayers and we as the community could come together and come up with a solution for keeping our kids in our district and not busing them somewhere else. or having to negotiate with the state to get more land. So I think that contrasts with my Democratic opponent. I contrast with my Democratic opponent on that issue.
Okay, thank you. Laura DeLone.
One of the key components of my campaign is ending the income tax in Virginia. This would instantly drop tax revenue by $10.2 billion, bringing about $3,400 to each household. And I think this is a great first step and a clean step that we can take to prioritizing our spending and just lopping off all the useless stuff, all the dog parks, all the crony projects, all the subsidies. So I'd like to end the income tax, drop tax revenue, not replace it with anything.
Yeah.
And Pepper Packard.
Yes, I don't know what my Democratic opponent stands for because she won't put her stuff out on the internet. I don't blame her. I don't blame her. But our Republican candidate, my opponent, Republican opponent, he wants to do the same old. I mean, he says, keep you won't go any further than, any higher than the taxes are now. You might cut them a little bit, but it's the same old song and dance. I've heard that before. So you get the same old with my Republican guy, and Democrat, your guess is as good as mine.
And what would you do?
And I would absolutely back Laura up here, and I'd get rid of the income tax, put more money in y'all's pocket, and then shave down taxes wherever else I could do it, and not have all this money go into, all these tax dollars go into slush funds, but rather actually prioritize them for what they were gathered for. Like the DMV's money should go to fixing roads. We don't need $400 billion more dollars to fix the roads. Whereas we all just got hosed for $400 billion. So.
Good.